Alright, so I'm gonna briefly talk about this code that I've done here. And as you can see, I have made some beams and some blocks over here to hang on, also jump. So I have this kind of parkour thing here. Let me just turn on the trace visibility so y'all can see what's happening. So when I press the E button, as you can see, it spawns a line trace, and it's going to detect the object. If it has a tag into it, then that means that the object is going to be hangable. So if you click on play and click on E, and then it detects a beam, and then the character is going to automatically go for that location of where it needs to be. And you can adjust the location of it. Sometimes it's not perfect. The character can have a different height depending on where the capsule trace hits, but that's okay. This is not a much complex system to be understanding. This is just one of the ways that you can learn how you can make this hang to swing system. So if you press E, like here, and then when you press the left mouse button, you're going to be able to swing and then jump really fast. And you can also swing between poles like this. Or if you prefer, you can just stand here and then just be like that, hanging on the bar. And if you want to jump, you can just press the left mouse button and then press E again to attach it. And none of this is running on the event tick, which is great for performance. I only have one timeline, which is going to serve for setting the location of the character. So let's start by explaining the system, what I've done, and how you can basically approach the system on your own. So when I press the E key, as you can see, I have commented the hang action, and it goes to a boolean. It basically checks if the character is hanging already. Then if the character is hanging already, it is going to detach the character, but we're going to go through that later. But normally when you press the E once, the character is going to is not going to be hanging already, and this branch is going to execute the false. So we're going to go to this code line here, and so here I have collapsed the graph. It says set up trace position. So I have made these parameters just for organizing where the trace is going to be at. So if you double click on here, as you can see, I have made some calculation for placing the capsule trace for objects. And I have made those parameters available for editing here. So here, just basically choose where exactly the capsule trace for objects is going to be in the world. So when I press E, and the capsule appears it here. As you can see, this value is 2. If I change it to be, for example, 22, it's going to move up a little bit, or maybe 88. So I can move the capsule here. And then we're going to set the results. I'm going to promote some variables here based on the hit result from that capsule trace. So when I go here, and as you can see, there is a white squarish point in where the trace hits. The trace actually hits the square there, the square point there. So we're going to basically get where exactly that point hit, and we're going to also set some other variables like the reference of the hit actor, and blah blah. We can also adjust the character height. So I have made this function here, which is called set ledge trace results, which is going to do exactly that. We're going to set some results here, and I have made a variable called didHitLedge. It's right here. And we're going to be able to change that variable depending if the trace calculation has detected something. So if it has detected something, then we're going to set this variable to true. And after that, we're going to set we're going to check if the actor that we just hit has a tag called hangable. So if you don't know how to add a tag yet, you can basically copy one of those static meshes here that are in the world. You don't really need to create a blueprint out of this, so it's just way better. You can scale it, make it look like a beam if you want, and once you're happy with the changes, you can go here on the search bar in the details panel. You can search for a tag, and here on the advanced you can add a tag, and in this case I want the tag to be like is hangable, but you can choose whatever tag you want. Just make sure you save the changes here. Just make sure the tag matches with the actor, with the name of the tag here, and it is going to be able to detect if it has a tag. So let's do an example here. Let's make this should be lower. So let's make an example that this does not have a tag. So when we play it and try to press E, my character is going to glitch. That's a bug that we have to fix. But the point here is to show that you can only attach when it has a tag. So when I type here hangable, then it is going to be hangable. There we go. And if you try to collide with other objects, it wasn't supposed to work, but I'm going to fix this in this code overview tutorial. Right. And yep. So in this function, we firstly check if the actor is valid. Then if it is, then we're going to proceed with the other code. So this is valid node is just for preventing errors to happen. And now we're going to set the variables, which is very important because we're going to reuse it. So we're going to promote the hit actor impact point, which is basically the location of where the little point happened. The little point gets visually noticed there. It's the impact point of where the capsule trace hits. We're going to set the current actor transform. So just get the actor transform like this. Like that. And I promote it to a variable and let it there. And everything happens here on this function. So after that, we're going to find lookup rotation based on the impact point. We're going to basically use this information for determining where exactly the character should rotate at. So we're going to rotate the character based on the impact point to match with the rotation of where the ledge is pointing at. So if the character is just like, if the character attaches and is turned to the left, it's going to try to correct the position. It doesn't really works great, but it's a huge addition. So here we're going to use the impact point rotation for fixing the rotation of the character. Fixed rotation of the character means just to rotate the character based on the impact point, as I've explained earlier. And here I'm going to break the rotator so I can keep the rotation of the character on the X and Y rotations. And the break rotator is going to just break and mount it and make the rotator. So we're just going to split. We're going to maintain the X and Y rotations and only modify the Z axis of the rotation of the character. Now we're going to make the transform, and we're going to set the scale to be a 1. That's the That's the default value. And now that we're going to make a transform of the target location of the character, where the character is going to be at. I also have set the location of the character where the character should be based on the impact point. So this is the impact point, and we can also be able to adjust the character height as soon as we attach the character. And we can also adjust the character height here based on this input value here. Right now it is set to 100, but it's going to depend on your character scale, your character's proportions, and so you can be able to adjust this value based on your character scale. If I type to be 55, for example, the character is going to be lower or higher. In this case, it's higher. And if you type to be 200, of course, the character is going to be almost in the ground, like this. So you can always adjust where exactly the character is going to be. You can always adjust the character's height on the beam when he gets attached to it. Now we can move backwards as well. Right now it's -5. If I type to be 55, the character is going to be a little bit forward, like that. So you can always adjust it. And if you want to make this input variable, this input option to be available in here on the function, you can go into function, click on here, and create a new input. Now you can adjust the character forward, something like that. Now we can change the variable type, which is going to be float in this case. Now we can go back there, drag off this, and type adjust character forward. Right. Now we can go back there, and as you can see, we have the variable here. So now in this case it's -5, so I'm going to just slide it there. That's the default value. That one works for me. Now that we have now this function basically calculates where exactly the character is at and where exactly the character should be at. Okay. So the transform value is just the combination of the location and rotation and scale of the character. So that we know where the exact location of the character on the location or rotation axis should be. I guess that's the best way I can explain it. So here we run the checks. First we check if it has the hangable tag. Hangable tag. We're going to be fixing the bug later, where if the static mesh does not have the hangable tag, the character can still attach to it, and that's a problem. Missing hangable tag. All right. I don't know why that happens. Let me see. Let me simulate. I think I said that it is hanging here. I shouldn't do that. So just do that, then it's good to go. Now if you press and play, let's see if it happens. Yeah, it's gone. So I should just delete that variable there. So now we're going to run the checks. So we're going to firstly check if the actor that we've just hit has the tag called is hangable, has a tag called Hangable. And then if it's false, then I'm just going to print an arrow here saying that it's missing. Blah, blah, blah. We're going to check if it's if we did hit the ledge. Now we're going to go for attach. So after all these checks are passed, we're going to attach the character. And I have made this macro here because I used to use this same code multiple times. So if you do that, then it's better to create a macro so you can set the what really needs to be set, and it's pretty parable. It's pretty more. The code gets more organized with this. So whenever you need to attach the character or detach the character, you can just do it here with just only one macro. So this macro I made for setting the movement mode, so you can choose what is the movement mode that the character is going to go for. And I disabled the movement of the character. Actually, I don't need to set anything here because I'm going to disable the movement of the character. So nothing's gonna happen, I guess. There's no problem with that. So as soon as you attach, the movement mode is going to be known. We're going to disable the movement. The mesh collision type is going to be no collision. Capsule collision type is going to be no collision. So the way I did this, this macro here is just getting these functions that comes with the engine. And so be sure to set the right actors here. So to this timeline, I set to play from start after all these checks. Firstly, I set the movement mode, the way the character has to behave. And now we're going to run this timeline here. So if you double click on that, I have a timeline that runs 0.5 milliseconds, half a second, and the value goes to 1. And I have this nice curve here. So if you want to add a new key, you can press and hold the shift button and left mouse button to add a new key. So you can add one here for the start and do that again for adding to the end. And after you're done with the changes to have a nice curve, you can select everything, right click and click on key interpolation to auto. So you can have that nice curve and you can adjust it nicely like this. So be sure to set the length of here to be 0.5 as well. It's very important. And here on the event graph, you're gonna have to add a float here. Add a float track first, and then you're gonna have this timeline here. So be sure to add a float track, not the other ones. All right, so we're gonna have this output value here. And we're just going to grab our actor transform variable and the target transform variable. So you're basically grabbing where the information of where the actor has to be at and where the actor is currently at. And here, out of this float, we're going to lerp transform. And the A is basically the current location of the character, and the B is the target location, the target location of where the character has to be at. Now we plug the return value which is going to be to the set actor transform. So we're going to set a new transform value. This timeline is going to update every second. It's going to update this function every second, I guess. And it is going to update, it's going to make it to be updated smoothly without snapping. So this first line of execution here basically sets the trace position. We get the results. We set where exactly the trace has impact, where exactly the trace has hit. Then we get those informations. We set those values to be reusable, so we can get the references inside this function here. We run the checks, basically check if the character has hit something, and if the actor has that tag, which I've talked about earlier, the Hangable Tag. And then if those checks has passed, then we can attach the character, setting the movement mode, disable the movement, blah, blah, blah. Then we're going to reuse those values that we set in the function to get them here and smoothly update the actor transform and set the new transformation value. And the result is going to be something like this. Now, if you were to change the timeline here, for example, let's add the length to be 5 seconds and the time to be 5 seconds. Now, the new transformation value is going to be updated at 5 seconds. And if you press on play, as you can see, the character is going to be updated at 5 seconds. And it's going to take a long time. So I'm going to go back to the previous value. So this is just for showing you what's really happening here. Now, if you press E while we are hanging, then we're going to get the macro again. So just drag and drop it. And then we're going to set the movement to be falling. We're going to just uncheck the disable movement. And the mesh collision type is going to be collision labeled, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to have the settings here. Disable is hanging. And we're going to be able to detach the character if we are already hanging. So we're going to press E. This happens. Now, for the next code, yeah, of course, we also have the code for this one I'm going to talk about after. We also have the states here for hang start, hang idle. But before I'm talking about that, I think I can talk about that code inside the animation state now, because this hang to jump here is just another code, which is for making the character to launch forward, like that. Alright, so let's go to the event graph. All I did is to cast the third-person character, promote it to a variable, and I get the reference of that variable. And I only get the variable called is hanging. Very simple. Now if you go to the animation graph, we have the default locomotion, the main states. I just have saved the main states, the main states to a cache. And then I call it main states. And then I use that cache. So I just basically make a new state machine. Go inside that state machine, create a new state. Like that. Go inside that state, and on the result here, I use the main state cache pose, and I call this main states. So I can go to the default slot, and then I can proceed with the code that I want here. So I can add a new state and do whatever I want here. So that's basically what I've done here inside the hang and swing states. So from main states, we go to hang start, which is basically this animation here. So based from this condition, if the character is hanging, then we're going to go from main states to hang start. And then based on this condition, if this hang start state has just finished, then we can go to hang idle. So for this condition here, I just get relevant animation time remaining, and then I get this one here. Get time remaining seconds for the most relevant animation in the source state. And then I plug that into here. And then I get if less or equal than .1, then we can enter the transition. Then that just works. So after the character has finished the hang start, then it's going to play the idle animation, which is just going to make the legs to move a little bit. Now if we just to unplug this, nothing of this would happen, I guess. Let's see. The character would be static, like this. Not so good. Yeah, that's everything what happens here. If you click on here, hang idle, I have this hang idle animation. And nothing much here. No. If the character is not hanging anymore, then based on this condition, if it's not hanging, then it could go back to main states, which is going to allow us to have the normal locomotion that we have normally. We also have that blending. I used it on some of the animations, for example, for jumping. I have the blend mode in. We have initialization. And I have some blend settings here. For example, the blend time is .3, explanation out, blend time .4 for the blend out, and the linear curve. So this is just for adding a more smooth body movement. Just basically for making him to move more smoothly and more like a human. So I guess we have come to the end of this animation graph here. Now we finally have the IK, which is going to override everything here. It's going to be basically, it is going to be set to true when we are not falling, and the IK works fine. I have to remove it. So that's basically everything you gotta do here on the animation graph. Now we can go to the left mouse button. So when you press the left mouse button, we can play an animation called hand idle to swing. Yeah. Now if you press on play and press E, here, as you can see, we're hanging. And then when you press the left mouse button, as you can see, the character goes forward. And you can also attach to the other beans by pressing E. Very cool. And now I just drag and drop the movement mode macros here. As soon as this animation is executed, I set the movement mode to be flying. This is false. Mask collision type is no collision. Collision enabled. And as soon as this animation is completed or interrupted, as soon as it finishes, we're going to detach and reset the collision. So we're going to have the movement mode to be falling, disabled, collision enabled, and reset the collision to be enabled again. So yeah, I guess that's everything we gotta do here. And if you have any questions, you can comment down below and let me see what you think.